What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Grid Live Encore. I'm Ben Schneider alongside, as always, Brandon Crossland. Brandon, how's it going tonight?
All right, Ben, in a little different environment for this week, but that'll be okay. It's all because of this thing you see. If I can share right about there. Yeah, we're under some maintenance here from the studio area, so this will be where we are for Encore this week. But good to see you, and got my cat here by my side because there's a little bench for her to sit next to me. And if anyone sits here, she's going to sit here. So we'll just go ahead and say hello. Okay. Yeah. If you'll recall, she was the one from last year that just stepped up onto the table, and I think it made a good highlight reel as well.
Well, we're glad to have you here, and we will make everything work with what we have tonight. But first, as always, I want to give a shout out to our Patreon supporters, Colin Deschelle, Mark, Robin, David, and Matthew. Your support means the world to us. It's what has allowed us to continue to grow this outlet, and specifically this YouTube channel, which is getting very close to 1,000 subscribers. Make sure you hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, and follow us on all of our social media platforms as well. And if you like what you see tonight, you can consider joining those individuals I just listed off there in our Patreon group, and we have a link to that in the description box below, as well as our Buy Me a Coffee if you'd rather make a one-time donation instead, or if you're watching us live here on YouTube or after the fact as well, we have the super chats and super thanks enabled as well. Now, Brandon, a little bit of a quieter week for us here on Encore. Only one race to recap, so we're going to give you a chance to chime in on a cup race that has a lot of people talking based on what happened yesterday at Bristol Motor Speedway. But there was also a truck race this weekend as well, also on the concrete for the first time in a few years. They had been running the dirt alongside the Cup Series as part of that experiment, but they're back on concrete as well here in the spring, and it was Christian Eckes. A bit of a surprise, I guess. I guess it's always a surprise when Kyle Busch runs one of these things and doesn't win it. But to his credit, Christian Eckes was able to hold off a hard-charging Kyle Busch at the end and take yet another win in that McAnally 19 truck. So, Brandon, I want to ask you about Eckes specifically. Does this one stand out a little bit more since he held off a multi-time Cup champion in Kyle Busch to do it?
Yeah, you'll always hear from me. It's a big success if you're able to beat Kyle Busch in a truck. Absolutely. Christian Eckes and McAnally Higgleman Racing deserve all the credit to that for that big victory. But he may have had some stats to help him out, though. This is the fourth straight year in Bristol trucks on the concrete where the driver has swept both stages, and none of those times did that driver go on to win the race. So based on the last times we've been there, Kyle Busch was destined to have the win taken away from him somewhere there in the closing stage, and that he did. Christian Eckes was able to get up alongside him, and Kyle Busch in the 7 got really loose, and Eckes able to pull away and take away with what he was having there at the beginning of the race, and got some seconds on the field, and in true Bristol fashion was just able to take the win. Christian Eckes has really been needing success like this, and it's good to see him get it here at Bristol, especially against Kyle Busch. That's absolutely something he's going to remember.
Yeah, you can really make the argument, I think, that Christian Eckes coming up one spot short in this race in the fall was maybe what cost him a championship, because he didn't end up making the championship for, but he won the championship race at Phoenix after the chaos of all those overtime finishes that we had. If he had won that race and been in the championship for when we got to Phoenix and continued to do what he did when we got there to that race, he would have been the champion. Christian Eckes, I think, with the amount of success that he's had, I think is there's no denying that he's going to be a championship contender again this year if he can keep this up. But specifically to win this race, I think has to be a massive confidence boost for him. And then again, to your point, Brandon, as well, to be able to do it, holding off the all-time leader in Truck Series wins, the all-time leader in Xfinity Series wins, two-time Cup champion, 60-plus Cup wins as well. Kyle Busch is one of the best in the business, and to be able to say you beat him straight up, in the closing laps after he was coming on very strong there at the end. I think even the booth was thinking for sure that he kept closing the gap, and was going to be one of those last lap passes or close finishes. But Eckes was still able to find what he needed in the end to hold him off. And that's certainly great to see for the series, that one of their regulars was able to actually take the fight to the Cup drivers. And I think that's, always the counter argument to, what we talk about here on the show all the time, not being a fan of Cup drivers from the lower division stealing the wins. But maybe on the flip side, you can make the argument that the wins mean more for the series regulars when you have Cup drivers like Kyle Busch, and even, to a certain extent, Zane Smith as well in the field. Zane Smith, of course, not running for truck points this year. The second highest finishing Truck Series regular was Matt Crafton, who has been in the headlines a couple of times in recent months for all the wrong reasons, and a couple of controversies along the way there, not having the success that he's enjoyed in previous years at ThorSport Racing. Been a while since he's won a race and even consistently run in the top five, but he ran in the top five this weekend. And as I mentioned, second among those that are going to be running for the championship this year. So Brandon, let's talk about Crafton here for just a moment. Given some of those recent controversies and struggles on track, does a run like this prove that the veteran, the all-time consecutive Truck Series starts leader, has a little bit left in the tank?
I think so. Bristol's is about as tough as they come for the Truck Series, and Matt Crafton to be able to go out there and do that with this team that he's just been, like you said, been with for so long. He's one of the last one of the last great veterans of the Truck Series, and that team has been ThorSport has switched from Ford to Toyota to Ford to Toyota. I think like 4 times since I've been on this show with you. It's been funny to see that back and forth. Back with Ford, of course, this year, and just after the drama and controversy that he had last year with Nick Sanchez, it just really not a good look, and we were kind of questioning the kind of behavior that we would expect from a veteran, and seeing that from Matt Crafton last year was kind of disgusting. And I remember just being disappointed with you on that episode last year. So it was good to see him come back with a good effort. He needs good finishes like that, just like Christian Eckes does, but on the ThorSport side of things. And I wanted to go back to the last point real quick about Kyle Busch. One thing I noticed, he actually has not been at Bristol in a truck since 2017. I had not realized it had been that long. He has won there. We count 4 times. 2017. Oh, sorry. That 5 times. Excuse me. He's been on pole 4 times. Has won 5 times. But yeah, has not been there in a truck since 2017. So coming back and just, we're used to, at least I'm used to hearing Kyle Busch and sweeping, going with Bristol the time that he did it, the whole weekend. It kind of goes together. Yeah, multiple, right?
Yeah, 2010 and 2017, he won all 3 races, and that stat actually, I mean, it doesn't surprise me too much because obviously this spring race has been on the dirt the last 3 years, and we haven't seen Kyle come and run one of those races. And also the fall race, I think, frequently is a playoff race, at least in the last several years. And with NASCAR's current rules and regulations, the Cup regulars are not allowed to run those races. So, you can take that for what it's worth, I suppose. I want to say hi to somebody on X/Twitter, Tim Holmes Design, enjoying the broadcast. Keep up the great work. Good to hear from you, Tim. I think that's a new feature that StreamYard's added recently to get some of the Twitter /X chats and be able to display those. So good to see you in the chat, and thank you again to everybody watching the stream tonight. We appreciate it. Now let's look ahead a little bit. I know our own Joe Samaniego was posing this question to us in our private chat this week, but Connor Zilic made some headlines this weekend in IMSA, and he's made a whole bunch of headlines already in his young racing career. Very successful. No matter what car he's gotten into. He almost won his ARCA debut last year, Watkins Glen, with a broken sway bar, only losing that race the last turn of the last lap and coming home in second. He's entered an Aspire truck. Ironically enough, we were just talking about Kyle Busch, the same number 7 truck that he drove this weekend at Bristol and has driven to victory already this year. He's in that truck this weekend at COTA to make his NASCAR Truck Series debut. So, Brandon, here's the question for you. Can Connor Zilic pull a Shane Van Gisbergen and win on debut at Circuit of the Americas?
That's got to be your favorite for the weekend for the trucks, hasn't it? I mean, come on. He was bound to win that Watkins Glen race last year, and then you look at his 2024 IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship campaign already at the Rolex 24 and at the Sebring 12-hour and LMP2, able to win there with the team with Aero Motorsport. That's just a phenomenal resume already this year. He is, I think I heard somewhere that he is like the top prospect of up and coming drivers. Connor Zilic, he's going to be a household name possibly in the next 5 years or so. It wouldn't surprise me at all if he came to Coda and took the victory. He has no excuse not to. He's got all the talent to do it, and he's got one of the best trucks in the field with Spire Motorsports, how they are now. That would be a very likely scenario for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, again, I want to put a little bit of I don't want to put too much pressure on the kid here because again, he is making his debut and he's only 17 years old, I think. So I'm not saying it's an expectation and it's a failure if he doesn't win or anything, but I think that like you said, Brandon, all the tools are at his disposal with the equipment that he's in, with the promise that he's shown in sports cars this year, and then obviously in ARCA last year with that race at Watkins Glen. It would not surprise me at all if he is, if not standing in victory lane at the end of it, very competitive in the top 10 or even top 5. I think that is absolutely a reasonable pick to make for this weekend, and we'll just have to wait and see if he can go all the way and take the victory, or if it's going to be a more modest run here in his debut as he gets used to the differences between the sports cars and the big heavy stock trucks in this case, I guess you could say, at Circuit of the Americas. But certainly looking forward to that. And again, obviously, after the race happens this weekend, we'll have all the coverage for you 1 week from tonight here on this show.
I will say there might be a little bit of difference for him. Being a road course specialist, I think it's going to be a little different with the trucks being at Circuit of the Americas. The last few races we've seen there, it's a lot more beating and banging involved to ply your way to the front as much as it is just showing pace. So that will play a factor as well. We'll see if he's up for that.
Yeah, well, and of course, the stages are back. So that's going to be an interesting...
You had to remind me, didn't you?
No, yeah, I know. I'm sorry, but
yeah.
What stood out to me was the stage lengths. Like every stage across all 3 series. I don't know if you saw this, Brandon, the tweet that I think Bob Pockers put out today, but every stage, trucks, Xfinity, and Cup, it's between 12 and 16 laps, except the last stage of the Cup race, which is 38 laps. So it always interests me, like how evenly the truck stages and Xfinity stages might be spread out, but the Cup stages, they seem to stagger much earlier, and then you've got the entire second half of more than just the second half of the race for the final stage. So, again, I personally really enjoyed last year without the stage cautions, but it is what it is, and I'm sure there are those fans that like the restarts as well, especially the chaotic turn 1 at Coda. So it's going to be an interesting experience across the board this weekend for sure.
Yeah, that's the restarts. As many restarts as we're going to get, that's just going to give them more and more chances to beat and bang, like we were talking about, especially through that first corner. There's going to be a lot of turnarounds, especially in the truck series. Get ready for it.
Yeah. All right. Well, like I mentioned at the start of the show, lighter week for us. Only the one race of the series that we usually cover here. So, Brandon, since you're usually unable to join us for the weekend wrap-up shows, I want to give you the opportunity to react to the Cup Series race, and certainly a lot of people talking about the tire fall off and the quality of the racing that we saw, including probably a longer green flag run than any of us anticipated all the way up to the checkered flag. So the first question, just very simple. Did you enjoy the race? Would you have voted yes on the Jeff Gluck poll?
Well, before I can answer that, this time around the Cup race, I saw a good majority of it, not from beginning to finish, as is custom most weekends, but from what I did see and from the reaction from fans, really glad that this was taken so well by the Gluck poll. That's a really good sign. And also, I think it has something to do with painting that wall. I was so excited when I saw them getting rid of the black. It's aged. It's been there long enough. The last great Coliseum. It can still be the last great Coliseum, but just the aesthetic of the place, it needed to get back to something else. And they brought back the white and red. It was wonderful. It looked great. Do I think it affected the racing? Maybe a little bit, but only because it may have helped them with their braking points or something like that. But looking at the race itself, the tire fall off was amazing. Goodyear did not see what was coming, I guess, and we got a lot of cheese on the outer grooves for a lot of the media folks to pick up and bring home. It kind of reminded me of, it wasn't a tire heavy race, but 2019 with the Indy Grand Prix, I was able to pick up some rubber from there when the year that Simon Pagenaud swept everything. but yeah, to see all the breaking records at Bristol, that's got to tell you something about how this race went. Of the lead changes there, we just don't see that kind of action there, where they stay so close together. Usually, we've got a guy or two getting a good 4 or 5 second gap between first and second and third, and then you got the rest of them and lapping cars and things like that. But there was just a lot of a lot of degradation with the tire, and that was affecting the race in an oddly satisfying good way, which I know Goodyear is probably scrambling right now, but the race fans are happy, and Bristol's probably going to want to get something like this at the night race if they're smart, and I know they are. So expect something like this probably in the fall, but Goodyear will probably bring something else to the table as well.
Yeah, when we talked about this on the wrap-up show yesterday as well, I would be a little surprised if Goodyear doesn't, at least look at the data and, maybe do a little bit of testing, to see if there's anything they should tweak when we come back for the fall race. But of course, this was the same tire that they used in the night race as well. So, who knows exactly what caused, what we saw on I say on Sunday yesterday, in the cup race. I mean, I'm certainly no scientist. I couldn't tell you what the difference was, but whatever it was, it certainly put on one heck of a show. And, it wasn't just the tires as well. Like you mentioned, Brandon, just watching the drivers, who could manage it better than others, and those that decided to push at different points in the race, leading to all those lead changes that we saw. I mean, a record number there as well. I thought it was a fantastic race. And, I think certainly in the moment yesterday, it was almost unanimous. I got to say, it really speaks to, I suppose, and I hesitate to use this word because I know some people, haven't been so happy when others have used it, but I do think we've been spoiled this year in many respects with the quality of the racing that we've seen on the cup side of things. And to be disappointed in a race or in a poll that's getting only 88%, yes, and was it a good race? I think, speaks to maybe the expectations that we have for how people are going to react to what we saw yesterday. But I mean, again, I'll just say what I said on the wrap-up show yesterday as well. If you didn't like that race, I've got a feeling either you're a Denny Hamlin hater, or you just have very unrealistic expectations, or you and I guess, are just diametrically opposed to what we enjoy seeing in racing. There was a caller on Dave Moody's show this afternoon, actually, that was basically saying the only thing that could have saved the race in his mind was a late race caution with 25 to go so that they could all put on fresh tires and then race hard to the finish. I can't tell you how hard I was praying for it to go green all the way to the finish yesterday.
Right. It was gonna ruin it.
Yeah, I'm with you. You put it perfectly, Brandon. It was going to ruin what was, a fascinating green flag run to say. I mean, again, the fact that the pit window was cut in half by how long the tires were lasting as opposed to the fuel run. I mean, this is something, and our friend Alex brought this up yesterday as well. How often do you think Ty Gibbs has had to conserve tires in his NASCAR career so far? I mean, it's been a long time. It's a completely different skill set. And again, I think it was no coincidence that Denny Hamlin won the race, Martin Truex Jr. was second, Brad Keselowski was third, because those are three of the most experienced guys in the field that were racing back when that was a much more common thing that these drivers had to learn how to do and manage well, and experience ultimately won out in the end.
Yeah, think of like a miniature Homestead Miami, and it's the championship. You had whoever could conserve their tires the best out of the championship four was probably going to be in front. And it kind of felt like that, only they weren't riding the top because they had the resin on the bottom and all the tire debris was on the top. And so by the end of the race, everyone was flat avoiding it. It was just really, really odd. And I like how Mike Joy said that they were experimenting, because they really were, because I don't think they really expected that to happen either, especially from qualifying. It didn't really give you any sense of what was to come. And Ty Gibbs sweeping both stages. You mentioned it. When in his career has he had much to do with conserving tires? It's good to see that for a sophomore driver. And Kevin Harvick noted it because he's, got ownership stake in it. Felt a lot like a ZMAX Cars Tour race, and I wholeheartedly agree. That's not a bad thing. That's a huge compliment. It's good to see that kind of racing at Bristol.
Yeah, well, and I brought this up yesterday as well. Josh Berry, I know he fell back a little bit towards the end, but there was one point where those three experienced guys were top three, and then Josh Berry was right there in fourth. And, Berry had a great qualifying run as well. I don't think it's any coincidence that he, with his experience, I know he's a Cup Series rookie, but as a racer, he's been around for a long time in late model races. How many short tracks has he run where he's had to know how to manage his tires? I don't think it was any coincidence at all that he was up there as well.
That's his bread and butter.
Yeah, absolutely, and fantastic product that we saw. And I just want to, before we move on here, also applaud NASCAR for not deciding, hey, we've got too much rubber on the track, we need to throw a caution to get the sweepers out there, or hey, the tires seem to be doing really strange things and wearing out a lot quicker than we expected. Let's throw a competition caution so that everybody can get caught back up. I'm so happy that they let that play out naturally. And again, even as some cars were losing tires and tires were going flat and they were slowing on the racetrack, they were able to get down to the apron and into the pits without causing a yellow. They seemed very, very hesitant to actually put their hand on the caution button, and they ultimately ended up not needing to. And again, to have a race where you only had 5 cars on the lead lap at the end of it, and yet also had all these different lead changes. And, it just, again, I don't know what more you could want from what felt like one of the most old school NASCAR races we've seen in a very long time. So I was thoroughly entertained, and I thought it was a fantastic race.
Yeah. And not entertained in the sense of, oh boy, cars are passing, I'm happy. No, it felt like a race, know, and it felt like everyone still had a legitimate chance, and it wasn't just some invisible force that was keeping them from being able to pass each other. It felt like just real competition where they all had an opportunity to make their way to the front.
Yeah, and again, to your point, Brand, it's not like the overtakes were because everybody was in this super tight, close pack like a super speedway, or somebody had DRS on a straightaway, so they get a power boost or a miles per hour boost or whatever, or push to pass. This felt like a natural, organic race that played out over what by Bristol standards is an incredibly long green flag run where experience won out in the end, and that was great to see.
And also the guy that got nearly clipped up in the wall earlier in the race ends up winning it. You got to love those even more.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess, to bounce off of that, I think some people have said, Goodyear maybe made a mistake. Was this mistake maybe the greatest mistake ever, or the biggest blessing in disguise, a happy accident, whatever you want to call it?
I hope they learned something from their accident. I hope they don't think of it as a mistake when they see the overwhelming positive response. Maybe NASCAR will be all right. Just let them cook. Let them think about that for the fall. And it's not a complete disaster. Take a look at the TV ratings. Let's see what happens. And also, I'd like to see the attendance change, if any, for the Bass Pro Shops, or I'm not sure what it's called. It's not bad. I don't know. The night race in September. Yeah, fair enough. I hope that increases, and I hope when we come back around the calendar for a concrete in spring that we can get some more people into the stands, because I think that was still the most depressing part for me, is to come back after the years of dirt and we left the concrete because of attendance, coming back to the concrete and still seeing just the sparsity in the stands. Was not very fun for me. And I think the racing product deserved much better than that.
Yeah, but to that point, though, I think we do have to remember, this place fits, 150, 160,000?
It's ginormous, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think, again, maybe we'll get there again one day. I don't know. But I think we're not in the mid 2000s anymore.
I know.
Trying to rebound from. I thought it was better. Let me put it this way: I thought it was better than like 2018, 2019. Certainly the All-Star race in 2020, but that was pandemic restrictions. They fit, I think, up to 30,000 in there. But again, the place is massive, so they were all spread out. But I think it still looked better than that. It looked like a nice, decent amount of people showed up, especially given there were some concerns about the weather earlier in the week. I thought, for the first race back, it was a decent sized crowd, and hopefully they were entertained by what they saw. I mean, again, I think most of the time a race is more entertaining in person than it is on TV, but this again, I think was absolutely fantastic. I think a lot of fans are walking away from it fired up and absolutely thrilled with what we saw. So we'll see if it changes. Yeah, the attendance of a night race, or when we come back in the spring next year.
It's especially entertaining at Bristol. If you get a chance, please go. And I think that the fans that went there, they got a lot better race than I think that they were ever expecting that they would get.
Yeah, or than they would have gotten on the dirt.
Yes,
that was the other thing. I don't know how many people
would have been ho hum.
Yeah, I mean we'll get into that here in just a moment, but Yeah, I think this was much better than what we've seen the last 3 years. I like that we did the dirt experiment. I think it was fine. But we know what we knew what to expect at this point. Going back to the concrete, I think that was one of the best races we've seen in years. Well, let's catch up on the chat here before we move on. Good to see our own Joe Samniego in the chat. Good evening, Joe, and saying he's agreeing with, I think this was in reference to applauding NASCAR for not throwing the cautions out. My first concern when Denny and Kyle blew tires was a race with cautions every 40 laps. 100% NASCAR letting them race was the way to go. And then we said it felt like old school. Here's a throwback for you. Days of Thunderline. Tires win races, Cole. Take care of the tires, no doubt. And that's exactly what Denny Hamlin did on his way to victory yesterday. But Brandon, on this note, the note of what we were just talking about here just a minute ago or so here, some people, I think, still miss the aspect of the diversity in the schedule and the fact that, last year we had Kimi Räikkönen in the series one week and Jonathan Davenport the next. And, the fact that we had a dirt race was like the last major sort of thing. I guess the street race was really the last major variety we needed to add here, but
second to last.
Something that we never thought we'd do again, regardless. Do you think there's still a place for a dirt race on the NASCAR schedule, whether it's Cup or otherwise? Because the trucks aren't going back to Eldora yet either. Would you like to see it at a purpose-built dirt track? Do you think the Bristol dirt experiment was a success now that we can look back at it at the rearview mirror? What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think I don't regret going to Bristol on dirt. I think that was a wonderful idea. I think it served its purpose. It showed that the concept was possible, and I credit Bristol for improving on it each year as we had it. 2021 was the guinea pig. We had to deal with the caked up dirt on the trucks, and all the dirt purists were just throwing all the sludge they could of, they don't know how to prepare a dirt track. It's terrible. It's terrible. Then we get to 2022. It's a little bit better. We've learned how to handle the windshields a little bit better. 2023, I think, was our best race for the dirt on the Cup side anyway at Bristol. But man, I would just love to have it at a purpose-built track, and I think it deserves that to show that part of oval racing. And I would love to have it at the house that Earl built at Eldora Speedway, but there's been some friction between Tony Stewart and the sanctioning body in the past couple of years. I think a lot of that has gotten better, and I think there's been openness from Smoke's part on that being a possibility in the future. But I mean, Eldora is not the only dirt track in the world. It's certainly one of the most probably could be improved upon to NASCAR standards to host a race, although some would disagree. I think, I've never been to Rossburg, Ohio, but I think that from what I've seen of scans of that place and video of the place, it looks like they could add enough stands around the joint to get it going. But you look around the country, there's plenty of other dirt tracks that you could give a big grant to, or SMI steps in and says, you know what, we're going to make this the dirt track for the Cup calendar, and it's going to be tagged with a truck race on the weekend, and we're going to invest in this for 10 years and see what it does. I don't know what their plan is. I'm sure they've got some sort of plan to bring dirt back. We haven't seen the last of those dirt Goodyear tires.
Yeah, I think that's the main thing for me is, and I said this, when in even the first and second year that we were doing the Bristol dirt experiment, was when I asked for a dirt race, and I did ask for a dirt race for several years. You can go back into my Twitter and look it up. That was the irony of me asking yesterday, why did we cover this place in dirt for 3 years? Well, people were asking for it, and I was certainly among them, but I never anticipated that we would do this. I thought we would, and again, I'm sure you would have to modify things a little bit from how a regular race is run, but I was thinking it was going to be bringing the Cup cars to Eldora. We're finding another purpose-built dirt track across the country. I know the trucks tried Knoxville. I don't think that experiment went very well. Certainly not the first year. I think the second year was a marginal improvement, but I think Tony Stewart knew how to prep that track. And, I think there were a couple races, in that, whatever it was, 7 or 8 year run that, you could say weren't so great, but obviously the inaugural year was a success. Norm Benning versus Clay Greenfield to get into the last transfer spot. That is still one of the greatest battles in Truck Series history in my book. And Austin Dillon winning the inaugural race there in 2013. I think that was unequivocally a success. And you saw the dividends of that with how many times they brought it back in the following years in terms of how that paid off for NASCAR and for Eldora and Tony Stewart. And then the pandemic really threw a wrench in everything. And, we haven't been back since, but I would certainly welcome it back for trucks. And I think, again, if the trucks can find a way to put on a good show again, and I have no doubt that they could, that's probably the track that comes to mind for me in terms of, could we find a way to bring that facility up to Cup Series standards, at least, for one weekend. Maybe it doesn't even have to be an annual event. Maybe it's like, we're going to do this, and this might be your only chance to see Cup cars on dirt, or your only chance for a very long time to see Cup cars on dirt. I don't know how they could pull that off exactly, but I don't want the book to be closed on just yet, just because I think, we have mixed feelings about how it went at Bristol Dirt. And certainly I don't think we got a good enough show to justify taking a concrete date away based on the show that we saw this weekend. I hope that the experiment hasn't run its course entirely, and that at the very least for a Truck Series, or maybe the Xfinity Series, we never saw them on Bristol Dirt. They're the ones.
I don't want to see Xfinity. I don't want to see Xfinity on dirt. I don't know.
Why not?
I don't know. I feel like the trucks are made to be on dirt. The Cup, I mean, I don't know. I just feel like Xfinity doesn't. I have no reasoning why they shouldn't be. Can you think of a good reason why they should be on dirt?
I don't know, but I can think of a good reason why they shouldn't be if the Cup cars and trucks are doing it.
I guess so. Yeah.
Like
you want like a full weekend of Trucks Xfinity Cup at this place that we go to every 5 years?
I guess I could see where it's like, the trucks, it's maybe it works better for the throwback sense of racing on dirt. Because that maybe fits with the series identity a little bit better. And then, once you get to the Cup level, the Cup schedule should be the most diverse schedule we have, and they should have one of every kind of race or surface on the calendar. So that would include a dirt race. So maybe I could see. I guess I would say the Xfinity Series would be the lowest on the priority list for bringing it back to dirt. But again, I can't speak for everybody in the series, but I'm sure there are a handful of Xfinity drivers that were feeling like what's in it for us. If we're not in on this dirt experiment here that we're doing at Bristol for the next few years. So who knows? But I think I'm with you in the sense that I hope that we haven't seen the last of it in any capacity. And I think that, Bristol was what it was, but I'm glad we have the concrete back. I think we got a great weekend of racing this past weekend, and who knows where we'll go from here. I think they've been very open, clearly, to taking some risks with the schedule in recent years. So I'd venture to guess we're probably going to go back at some point, but maybe it's not going to be for a few years, but maybe it's going to be sooner than we expect, but we'll see.
Yeah, to me, in those 3 years, Bristol kind of felt like it's like it wasn't their first choice, and it was kind of okay, this will be a Band-Aid to fix our event that's not performing so well until we get what we actually want on dirt. And I guess and it ended up not happening, and so they went back to concrete. That's at least what it felt like from my perspective. That certainly is probably not true. They probably intended for it to be at Bristol, but for some reason it feels like that was like the only financially feasible move at the time being, and it fixed their problems that they had, and now those problems are kind of lessened, and they're able to go back to concrete. But yeah, purpose built is you got to think purpose built is somewhere in their agenda for the next 5 years if they want to go back to it.
Yeah, I think, yeah. And again, if they're going to go back to it, I think that's what it has to be. Because again, I think just think of the logistics and the time and the resources and the money spent converting it, and then unconverting. Yeah, and then unconverting it for the fall. I mean, that's the other thing. How much of an effort was that to get a track ready for the night races in the summertime or the early fall? I think that's a big part of it as well. It's not like we did this for 3 years and let it sit for 3 years. No, we had concrete races in that time as well, and then we had to come back and do it again the next year. So it was a monumental task.
And getting Goodyear to develop dirt tires and all the components that you put on the car for that, you're not going to throw all the hours you put into that R&D, just throw it away. I'm sure
Sure.
they got to be doing something.
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll wait and see what happens there. In the meantime, let's do one final open segment here while we still have some time tonight. Apologies to the Grid Tonight crew. We're going to steal the name of one of your segments here, but let's do some hots and knots on the show tonight. We're about a month of the way into the season here. Brandon, I just want to ask you, and you can throw some Cup drivers in here as well if you'd like, but specifically for a series that we cover, who has stood out to you as an overachiever, and who do you think, when we look at, the underperformers as well, drivers that need to step it up, who would you put in that category as well?
You want to start with trucks, I guess?
Sure, whatever you want.
Yeah. I mean, if for trucks, Tyler Ankrum, I did not see him coming in with the veracity that he has in 2024. That's been a big start for him with McAnally Higgleman. Corey Heim, expected him to do fine. But I mean, Tyler Ankrum and Raja Karuth, I guess, are my two big hots and lighting up here early. Looking at Xfinity, or what are yours for trucks while we wait?
Well, I mean, certainly, I think those are the biggest two. Tyler Ankrum has had a great start to the year, and really the entire McAnally Higgleman team, I think, is a hot. With how they started the year, there's a lot of speed in those trucks. Eckes obviously winning this weekend, and Ankrum looking like he might be a dark horse pick for a championship and knocking on the door of standing in victory lane again. Corey Heim, again, when you think of him as a contender based on how he ran last year, I think arguably if we'd been in a regular season format, would have run away with the title. So no surprise to see him running up there and collecting top fives and top tens like he is again. And then I know Nick Sanchez has had an off couple of weeks, a couple of 17th place finishes back to back, but how he started the year, thoroughly impressive, winning at Daytona. I think long overdue. He probably should have won a race or two last year, and then following it up with another top five at Atlanta. That's been a pleasant sight for me to see as well. And then Spire Motorsports as a team, just reminding me again with Rev having that alliance. And again, I know it's hardly earth-shattering news when Kyle Busch steps into a truck and wins a race, but they've been on fire this year with him picking up his win and nearly picking up another at Bristol this weekend, and Raja Karuth obviously getting his at Las Vegas. That entire team seems like they're really bringing strong trucks to the track this year. So that's been good to see as well.
Looking at Xfinity, some of the hots. Well, I have some knots for Xfinity. It would be starting with Sammy Smith. And also, I guess I had to throw Sam Mayer in there too for Junior Motorsports. That's been some really sad starts for them. And then you look at Justin Allgaier being just ripped out there after the dog leg with 6 or 5 laps to go at Phoenix. That's also put a damper on things for them. And Austin Hill, an obvious hot. Chandler Smith, obvious hot. What do you have here for Xfinity, Ben?
Well, I mean, those again, I think there are two guys that are far and away, the class of the field right now. I guess, you mentioned Junior Motorsports. I mean, I think the entire team is, it's been a slow start for them. Obviously, Allgaier probably, was on his way to a Phoenix win, but, you look at where their team is right now, it has not been, what we expect from Junior Motorsports cars competing for race wins week in and week out. But Sam Mayer in particular, there was a stat that I think Joe brought up on the wrap-up show yesterday about, Joey Logano having his second best finish of the year and only being, a finish in the mid-20s and the start of the year that he's had in Cup. Sam Mayer, not this weekend, obviously, because Xfinity was off, but the last time they were out at Phoenix, he picked up his second best finish of the year, and it was only 34th. So, what does that tell you about the start to the year that he has had? Now, 3 of those 4 are obviously DNFs. He got an 11th place finish, just missing out on the top 10 at Atlanta. But, I mean, for somebody that I think really took a massive step forward last year, that we expected to break through even more this year and be a championship contender again. Still early, plenty of time to recover from this, and obviously get a win and punch your ticket into the postseason, and then it's on from there. But Junior Motorsports as a whole, I think, really has a lot of work to do to turn their program around after pretty sluggish start to the year.
Yeah, and that's eerily similar to what we were saying last year with Junior Motorsports, that we were saying, well, something feels off. They need to pick things up. It's not going so well. And then when we got into the summer and the fall, we were like, oh, okay, they're fine. They're fine.
Yeah.
So this is definitely that part of the year where if things don't look right now, or even if they look really bad right now, it's okay. You're probably you still have a chance to be okay, because there's still a lot left to play here.
Yeah, for sure. I guess we'll cycle back to the truck series here. Ben Rhodes, I think, is probably a not at this point of the year. It looks like he's down in 15th in points here. Obviously, 2 championships in the last 3 seasons, and trying to defend those here. That's not off to a great start. But again, we are only a month into the year, and there's certainly time to bounce back from that. Stuart Friesen's another one, and I heard them talking on Sirius XM this weekend about him, and kind of the frustration that's boiling up for him right now. And he got into a little bit of a post-race scuffle with Nick Sanchez this weekend as well. I'm sure he's very frustrated that the speed just doesn't seem to be in his truck like it's been the last several years. He doesn't look like a championship contender right now either here. So certainly a lot of work to do over there with that 52 truck as well.
But also say a not for Ty Dillon at Rackley War. That's not going so well so far. And also for Lane Riggs at Front Row Motorsports, although this weekend was probably his best outing the year so far, moved up 8 spots in the points.
Yeah, and he did have that disqualification at Atlanta that cost him a lot of points there, so that certainly didn't help. But and again, I hope that it turns around for him, because I think Lane Riggs had a lot of people were very high on his potential coming into this year and thought that this was a fantastic. Yeah, I'm right there with you, Brandon. Fantastic opportunity for him to come in here and make some noise with a team that obviously is championship caliber now. And you could maybe even say not just in the truck series, but you look at what their cup program is doing. Front Row is turning into a very strong team week in and week out in the truck series, obviously, but even in cup, Michael McDowell has really stepped it up, and Ty Gilliland has also had some strong runs to start the year. So you would hope that Lane Riggs can turn around some point. And I think he, to his credit, took a step in that direction this weekend. But man, Ty Dillon's another one that it's tough to know what to say about Ty, because obviously he had success in this series, and then some modest success in Xfinity as well. It's hard to deny that the Cup Series experiment for Ty Dillon did not go very well, and that there were not too many strong runs that came out of his time there with the teams he was bouncing between, and just kind of an unfortunate deal. It's seen him get shuffled out of that series now and back in trucks. I was hoping for him that this was going to be something that could, reignite his passion and his, ability to go out and compete for wins. And, unfortunately, again, still time to turn it around.
It's still March.
Yeah. Yeah. There's certainly time to bounce back from this, but it's not been a great start to the year for him as well. And, again, just kind of being, invisible on the broadcast, I think a lot of times that can be a good indication of, you're not running where you need to be. You're not like going out in a blaze of glory, like crashing all the time or anything. To Ty's credit, he's bringing the truck home in one piece on most weekends, but you certainly would hope that they could find some more speed in that truck and start running a little bit more competitive for him, because Ty's been through a lot the last several years. And again, that's why I'm hesitant to be too hard on him, because I know that he hasn't had the greatest experiment or greatest equipment rather in Cup, but it's hard to watch him struggle here at the back of the pack, and even in the truck series. Yeah,
for sure. I also look back there at 30th and see that Tad Moffitt.
Yeah,
and it's unfortunate there for that new team assembly as well under that 46.
Yeah, well, but that's just it though as well. Sometimes it takes new teams a little bit to
Yeah, for
get up
sure.
to speed here, and we'll see. Hopefully we get him second half of the year. I think that might be a better indication of where we can expect that team to be running, and hopefully they can take that step forward here in the not too distant future.
And back with Lane Riggs, Front Row Motorsports, that's one of your no excuses teams for the Truck Series. You look at Zane Smith and all the success he had there in the past 2 years. You've got to go out there and perform this second half of the year. He definitely can do it though. Maybe some short tracks that aren't Bristol, but this just shows you what he's capable of on the short tracks, because this was his best result so far.
One more hot before we wrap it up here. What more can you say about Shane Van Gisbergen in Xfinity? And I know a lot of people are expecting him to go out and put on a show this weekend. We're getting up to our first road course of the year. He's in the Cup race as well as is AJ Allmendinger. They're bringing out that third number 13 car at Colleague, so going to be interesting to see how those two run. But a third at Atlanta, a sixth at Phoenix. Doing something entirely different from what he's used to, entirely different from where we expect him to see. Where we expect to see him, up there running in those positions. I think it's been a fantastic start to the year for him. And, again, he had an unfortunate deal at Las Vegas with a mechanical issue taking him out. I would have loved to see where he would have ended up in that race. But, great start to the year for him, I think, all things considered, given that this is, brand new to him in many respects.
And I think the fact that it seems that a lot of drivers are not too worried about him right now and don't see him as a big threat in the fact that he's been so dangerously close throughout this Xfinity season so far. It's prepping up for a really fun COTA race.
Yeah. Real looking forward to this weekend. I think we got a lot of, strong competition in the field here, and certainly the road course, I guess, maybe not ringers in this case because, SVG is full-time in the series this year, but, we'll see here. I think that there's compelling storylines across all three series, and it's going to be a lot of fun to follow this weekend at Circuit of the Americas.
Yeah.
Now, before we wrap it up, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and also looking ahead to Chicago and hoping there's no rain for Xfinity this year so we can actually see what they can do.
That would be nice. All right, well, before we wrap it up, Brandon, again, if you want to go into the Cup Series here, by all means, be my guest. I know we only have one race to pick from, but what was the one shining moment that stood out to you from this weekend here in the return to Bristol on concrete in the spring?
Well, I'm a big aesthetic guy, so I still can't get over that they brought the white and red walls back to Bristol Motor Speedway. That's just a big to use an Inside Out reference. That's one of my core memories, is having the walls at Bristol look as such and not with the black walls. But I know that's a pretty lame one shining moment, but that is one of my one shining moments for the weekend. I also just seeing all the fun that the media crew had, saw Danny B and Matt Weaver and guys like that out there with big clumps of tires, and just seeing people enjoy their livelihoods is a lot of fun too.
No, well, I don't think that's the lame one at all. I think that's I'm right there with you. I love
it's a new era in Bristol, and I think they're starting to see that. Now all they need to do is take Dale Jr.'s advice and put some asphalt on the track whenever this concrete wears out.
Yeah. Well, that's the last step there, I guess. There you go. But I think there's something to be said for that. I think what they've done at North Wilkesboro as well. Leaving that one patch of the original Winston Cup, and I'm sure the day's coming where they're going to paint over that. But how they redesigned that track in bringing it back, I think that that plays no small role in your feelings as you walk inside a facility like that. So I think that certainly went a long way in exciting a lot of fans again for the return to concrete here this time of year.
I think just overall their overall marketing as well. They use that a lot. Are you ready? Because vintage NASCAR is back, and they brought back the racing the way it ought to be slogan and all that. It just they were playing all their cards right. And props to Bristol and everyone at SMI. Yeah,
for sure. And then for me, on my one shining moment, again, I'm going to take the easy one here, but Christian Eckes, I think, thoroughly impressive, and no small task to be able to hold off a driver like Kyle Busch to get that win, and especially based on what happened to him in this the last time we were here last year in the playoffs, and maybe being one thing when you look back in hindsight at what maybe kept him from winning a championship here, to come back and put that in his rearview mirror and go forward and win the race this weekend and hold off on the best in the business to do it. Job well done, and he's staking his claim as a championship contender, no doubt. So great to see on Christian's part, and that is going to do it for another episode of Grid Live Encore. Thank you all so much for joining us on a bit of a different weekend here for us, with only one race out of a series that we regularly cover here. So thank you for sticking with us for a couple of open segments and open discussions here. Thank you, Joe, for participating in the chat as well. And thank you all so much for watching and supporting the channel. And make sure you hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. That's the one thing we cannot push enough right now. You see the ticker going by here on the bottom of the screen. We are so close to that wonderful milestone of 1,000 subscribers. So make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. And also follow us on all of our social media platforms, X/Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitch, LinkedIn, and Threads. And like I said, most importantly, right here on YouTube. If you really liked what you saw tonight, you can also take a few minutes after the show to check out our Patreon. Join Colin Deschelle, Mark, Robin, David, and Matthew in investing in Grid Network to help keep us on the air throughout 2024 and beyond. And as you can see, our goal of $500 per month long-term will help us begin to attend races on site on a more regular basis, and that only expands our coverage for you, the viewers. Or if you'd rather make a one-time donation instead, you can visit the Buy Me a Coffee link in the description box below. You can buy a coffee for your favorite on-air talent. Any amount will help us continue to grow our motorsports media outlet. And like I mentioned at the start of the show, if you're watching us live here on YouTube, we now have the super chats enabled as well. Now, on Wednesday, Grid Tonight, we'll be back with our friend Josh Birch, along with Kobe Lambeth and Matt White. Women in Motorsports, hopefully back this week as well. Again, no series that we regularly cover here, but hopefully Joe Isha and I can get together and have a little bit of a show there for that program. So stay tuned for that. And like I mentioned, as always, make sure you stay tuned for coverage from Circuit of the Americas next weekend. All three series in action of the NASCAR side of things. And we'll have the Xfinity and truck recaps for you here Monday night. Brandon, any final thoughts before we sign off?
Yeah, get ready, guys. We're getting to our first road course weekend of the year, and then the 2 weekends after that, short tracks back to back. We're going to have plenty to talk about. And if anything, subscribe to Grid Network, because Bubba Pollard's coming to Richmond. If anything, you need to get ready for that, because we're going to be wild on here for that. So please subscribe right now. Just do it. Right there. Just do it.
Yeah, lots to look forward to. And again, the only thing that can make me more excited for this weekend coming up after such a strong start to the year for NASCAR is if we didn't throw the stage cautions at the end of the stages. But hey,
we're still going to get a good show.
We are. I firmly believe that. I'm hopeful. Again, if we get a good show in the Cup Series with the general consensus of how the next gen cars race on road courses the first 2 years, if we can get a good show in that race, I think NASCAR is on top of the world right now when it comes to motorsports. So it's been a great start to the year, no doubt. All right. Well, for Brandon Crossland, I'm Ben Schneider. Thank you all so much for watching. And as always, have a wonderful rest of your week. We'll see you next time here on Encore to recap COTA. We'll see you then.